Michael Gordon Peterson, a name that might not ring a bell for many, but mention Charles Bronson, and it evokes a very different response. Bronson, one of Britain's most notorious prisoners, started life as Michael Peterson in 1952. Born in Luton, Bedfordshire, his early years were far from idyllic. He was one of 4 boys. He had a relatively normal upbringing with loving parents. He excelled as a boxer and a wrestler, showing early signs of his physical prowess. However, Peterson's life took a turn towards delinquency at a young age. He found himself caught in the undercurrents of petty crime. By 13, he had joined a gang of robbers, marking the start of his descent into a life embroiled in crime and punishment. He held a job at Tesco, but trouble seemed to find him. In 1974, at the age of 22, Peterson received his first prison sentence. He was convicted of armed robbery. The court sentenced him to 7 years. This marked a pivotal moment in his life. Little did he know then that prison would become his world, a place that would shape his future and seal his fate. The man who once went by Michael Peterson was fading into the background. A new persona, hardened by the walls of prison, was beginning to emerge. This was just the beginning of a long and tumultuous journey through the British penal system. The world would come to know him by a different name, Charles Bronson. Prison life did not rehabilitate Michael Peterson, it hardened him. He quickly gained a reputation for being unpredictable and violent. His time inside was marked by a series of brawls with inmates and confrontations with prison staff. These incidents only served to lengthen his sentences, solidifying his image as a dangerous and uncontrollable force within the prison walls. It was during this period of escalating violence that Michael Peterson began to transform into Charles Bronson. He adopted the new name in 1987 at the suggestion of his bare-knuckle boxing promoter. This symbolic shift represented a complete break from his former life and the embracing of a new, hardened persona. Bronson's notoriety extended beyond mere brawls. He developed a penchant for rooftop protests. These acts of defiance, often causing extensive damage to prison property, became his trademark. One such protest alone resulted in £250,000 worth of damage. These acts, while destructive, were also Bronson's way of railing against the system, a system he felt had chewed him up and spat him out. His infamy grew with each outburst, each act of defiance adding to the legend of Charles Bronson. The name became synonymous with chaos, violence, and an unyielding resistance to authority. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was a force to be reckoned with, a symbol of untamed aggression within the confines of the British prison system. The name Charles Bronson became synonymous not just with violence but with hostage-taking. In 1993, he took a prison librarian hostage. This harrowing incident, lasting for several hours, ended without serious injury. However, it set the stage for even more dramatic and dangerous situations. In 1996, Bronson found himself at the heart of another hostage crisis. This time his captives were fellow inmates. 3 Iraqi prisoners. He held them hostage, demanding an assortment of bizarre items, including an inflatable doll, a helicopter, and a cup of tea. Bronson claimed his actions were a protest against the treatment of Iraqi prisoners in British jails. These incidents, as alarming as they were, paled in comparison to the event that would seal Bronson's fate. In 1999, he took prison art teacher Phil Danielson hostage for 44 hours. During this ordeal, Bronson subjected Danielson to terrifying threats and psychological torture. This act of extreme violence resulted in Bronson receiving a life sentence. Bronson's actions, while often framed as acts of madness, were often rooted in his perception of injustice within the prison system. He saw himself as a crusader for prisoners' rights, fighting against a system he viewed as inherently corrupt and abusive. However, his methods were extreme and often counterproductive. Section 4. Finding Faith and Love, Bronson's Conversions and Marriages. Despite his reputation for violence and chaos, Charles Bronson's life was not devoid of moments of seeking solace and connection. In 2001, he married Fatima Saira Raymond. Their relationship blossomed after Raymond saw his picture in a newspaper and began writing to him. Bronson converted to Islam for the marriage, even changing his name to Charles Ali Ahmed. However, this chapter in Bronson's life was short-lived. The couple divorced in 2004 after 4 years of marriage. Bronson subsequently renounced Islam. He later claimed that the marriage was not legally binding. This brief foray into marriage and religion seemed to offer a glimmer of hope for Bronson's rehabilitation. However, it ultimately ended in disappointment, further cementing his image as a volatile and unpredictable figure. Years later, Bronson found love again, this time with Paula Williamson, an actress who had appeared in the soap opera Coronation Street. They married in 2017 in a prison ceremony. This relationship, too, was fraught with difficulties and ultimately ended in annulment in 2019. Bronson's love life, much like his life inside prison walls, seemed destined for turmoil. Despite his attempts to find love and meaning outside the walls of prison through letters and brief encounters, Bronson remained tethered to his past. His relationships were often passionate but short-lived, reflecting the tumultuous nature that defined his life. Section 5. A life sentence. Bronson's battle for parole. Since receiving a life sentence in 1999, Charles Bronson has been embroiled in a constant battle for freedom. He has had numerous parole hearings, each one met with a resounding no from the parole board. His violent past and unpredictable nature have made him a high-risk candidate for release. Bronson has consistently argued that he is a changed man, that he has renounced violence and deserves a chance at a normal life. He has expressed a desire to live out his remaining years peacefully, perhaps even to mentor young people to avoid the mistakes he made. However, the parole board has remained unconvinced. His history of violence, coupled with his continued defiance of prison authorities, has made his release a difficult proposition. In his most recent parole hearing in 2023, his request for a move to an open prison was denied. Despite the setbacks, Bronson has maintained his hope for freedom. He continues to appeal for parole, clinging to the belief that he will one day walk out of prison a free man. However, as the years turn into decades, the possibility of his release seems to diminish with each passing year.